Hello everyone, my name is Shelby and this is the series where I reveal what is inside these mystery pottery molds I found on Gumtree. Hello and welcome to part 41. I can't believe I'm starting to lose count already. Now I just want to say something before we get into this week is to stay until the end. I reveal these pieces but the way they change in the kiln is absolutely magical, so I hope that I've hyped you up enough because I was really shocked with the results of this week's reveal. And I did something a little bit different, but I'll walk through that when we get to it. We've got to reveal the thing first. So I pour it up, one side's got a round hole, the other side's got two smaller holes, and I accidentally filmed the label, but we opened up to a beautiful shaped mug. We've done a couple of mugs in this reveal series so far, but this one is a Duncan ceramic mold. It is a coffee mug made in 1964. So that's really awesome, really cool to see, and really lovely style and shape of the mug. It's got sort of like a rounder, more wider base, and it goes up to a narrow sort of point. It's also got, when I poured the mold, I couldn't tell, but there was a mark to show where to put the handle. I really like this mug because it's actually got so much potential for a lot of things. Like, it's where I've had the curved belly mug, this one's a lot flatter and smoother, so I can do a lot more designs. It's a lot easier to do illustrative work because you're not thinking about how that curved dimension of another mug is going to, I guess, like distort your illustration work. So this one is absolutely beautiful shape wise to actually paint and do some really nice detailed illustrative work. So I'm really chuffed about it. It's a really nice height as well. I really like the height of it, but we'll get to it. I ended up pouring 6 of these mugs. I poured 2 white ones, which I painted with the flower and gum design. I didn't film this process because I filmed a couple of videos of me painting the flower and gum design, so I'll try and figure out how to link them in the YouTube so you can go check out how I paint those flower and gum designs on the other YouTubes. But this week I wanted to show a focus on staining clay. So I had a few requests after I attempted staining clay but didn't add enough. I wanted to give it a red hot crack this time and give it more of a go and actually get some successful results, and I'm so pleased that I did, but they weren't the results I was expecting. So we'll get to that in a second. I am showing you in here how I attach the handles because this is a 2-piece mold. I've got to attach the parts. So what I do is I grab my slip, I mark out where the handle was going to go so I knew where to score. I then scored the area with a wire brush thingy. You can get your pin needle tool or whatever can carve it up because you just want to cross hatch. I then do it on the handle, add some more slip, and then attach. Now I jiggle it and wriggle it and make sure that I've got a really nice cohesive bond on all the areas, and then I sponge away the excess. I then lift it up to make sure that I have put it on straight. I kind of do this whilst I'm doing it, but I'm showing you here that I've just made sure that the top lines up with the bottom so that you've got a symmetrical handle and that it's not super wonky, because you don't want a wonky handle. And once that's done and I know that it's in a good spot, I then go in with just like a little bit more of a almost like a thicker slip, almost clay, and just seal up the area and then sponge away the excess. You don't have to do that. I've just found that that works really well for me, not getting cracks, but everyone does handle attachments differently. Next up, we've got our staining slip process. So I get 3 separate jugs and I've got a pink stain, a lavender stain, and a coral stain. I have used the coral stain before in a previous video, but I'm going to give it another go to get a different pigment this time. Now, the best way to actually mix the powder into your clay is to actually mix it with a little bit of water and make it a liquid. So when you put it in, it actually mixes really well and you don't have these dry clumps throughout your clay. But I was being lazy and I like the effect of showing you of the powder entering the clay. So that is a better way. As I was mixing this up, I was filming on my phone because I do my TikToks and Instagram videos. And when I stopped filming, I moved my tripod and you can see the tripod's leg up in the top left corner. It knocked the pot over. I got it all on camera, but you can see here, this is a perfect example to show you why you should mix it with water, is that you could see all those little clumps of dry pigment not mixing in properly with the clay, because yeah, it's just better to mix it in with the water. But aesthetic for video wise, I thought it would be cool to show just, dumping the powder in there. So enjoy me cleaning up my mishap, which is actually pretty satisfying. I actually upcycled this table so that it was practical for working with clay, so that when I do have slip issues where they fall, slip and spill everywhere, I can quickly clean them up and they're not drying out on the table. I used to have a fold up camp table and it would just like dry out on the table and it was just a nightmare. So this one I can scrape up any excess that spills on the table, or I can let it dry out and put it on my recycle bucket. So in we go with those coloured slips. I did a mix match of colour just to see what would happen. Last video I tried coloured slip. I sort of mixed them and tried to do a marbling effect that didn't really work, but I think that was more because the pigment wasn't enough. I didn't add enough of that dry powder to the clay. And it could have even been that I didn't mix it in properly, because again, I did that technique of just throwing the dry material in. But opening it up, I was kind of a little bit disappointed. It didn't really look much different to my white clay, but inside you could see those pigments that hadn't been mixed in properly were leaving like a dry, lumpy consistency on the inside. So when I saw that, and I saw that some of the dried particles weren't I guess like covered, I decided not to turn this one into a mug, because I don't want to risk the glaze not completely covering those pigments and then someone drinking that from that and then having like powdered residue. Like, it's just unsafe to drink from. So I decided to make that one into a paint pot, but you'll see what I did with that in a second. But I decided to go in with the coloured slip and paint directly onto the mould. This is something you can do with, I've done it with underglaze before, but with the coloured slip, I'm just adding sort of layers upon layers. The first one I did was a dotty spotty one. I was actually going to do stripes, but when I put the slip over it, accidentally just like drooped all through it. So that's why I went dotty and spotty. It was pure accident, because I didn't get straight away, I already even made a mistake. So I just rolled with it, and I figured it'll be really cool to see how this turns out anyway. When you are painting directly onto the mold, you need to think sort of like backwards. So you're kind of putting your like forefront on first and then your background on last, so it kind of shifts the way you think about it. I didn't do any like extreme designs like putting a full scenery on these or anything. This was purely just to test the pigments of these stained slips, and also just to test the techniques. But yeah, if you were going to do a scenery, you'd have to put whatever's going to be in the foreground on first and then just build your way back, and also just be super aware of where everything's going to be. So yeah, just thinking about that is boggling my mind on how I would figure that out for a different design. But for now, these are going to look really cool. I hope. I hoped, and I think that regardless of how these turned out, it is so thrilling and exciting and challenging and wonderful to test out new techniques and new skills. I think that that's the best part about doing a craft or doing a hobby or just picking up a pencil and having a sketch, is that you always want to stimulate yourself and challenging yourself, so you learn new things, not just about you, but about yourself. So opening up that mold, the spotty dottiness looks really groovy. It was how I expected, but the thing about it is it's quite a muted tone. So it'll be interesting to see how, when it fires, how those colours are popped. So if you've seen videos of mine before, you'll see that the underglaze looks really pastel, but then when you put the clear gloss over the top and then put them through the kiln, the colours really come out in their true vibrancies. So I'm really interested to see not only each colour individually, but how they combine or complement each other or don't complement each other when they come out of the kiln. So for this one, this is the sort of stripy effect. I was going to do full on stripes, but I decided to just do this kind of like painterly, streaky kind of mug. And as I was talking about the foreground before, I actually totally forgot about that concept and just went straight in with one color, then two color, then three color, instead of mixing up the colors so that there were different colors in the foreground and background. Regardless, I'm sure it's going to be fine. I'm sure it's going to look really cool. And I knew straight away, as soon as I started painting, I was like, oh, I forgot to think about that. So that's why I mention it, in case you decide to do this technique, that you want to mix up your colors, or be aware that the color you paint on first is your forefront. You can see that that darker color is quite beautiful on top. I love that it looks like sort of like a brush mark, like a painter has just gone ham all over this mug. So I'm really excited to see how those pigments will change. I did two of this painterly detail mug. I did one with a white slip back, and then the other one with the leftover slip from this experiment. So one's going to be colored, one's going to be white background or whitish. And the other thing I did was, because I poured the handle with the colored slip, I made sure I kept some colored slip aside so that I could join those handles together without having sort of like a jarring white seam between the mug and the handle. So that's something to be mindful too with when we're working with colored slip. You want enough to join your handles still, so you don't have this jarring contrast of white, and like, why is that there? So before I spoke about a mug that I did first that I couldn't turn into a mug because some of the pigment was exposed on the inside. So with this one, I decided to do something totally different that I haven't done before. And this is just a video of doing different things. And I decided to carve into it. The reason I decided to carve into it was not just because of a mishap with the pigments on the inside being exposed, but also because the coloring on this, I couldn't really tell that it had changed colors. So what I thought might have happened is, because I poured in one color and then poured in the next color, is that the outside was just one color, but the other colors had sort of mixed on the internals. So my hope with carving out areas of it is that it might expose some different colors underneath. Now, doing an inlay, I'm going to run out of time to explain this, but there is a technique where you can pour slip into the mold, tip it out, pour another color slip, tip it out, pour another color slip, tip it out really quickly, so you can get layers of colors and carve away so you've got different depths of color. I didn't do that this week, but that's something I should try in future. But that was my logic behind carving into this one, to see if any of that beautiful color would come out underneath. You can kind of see a little bit of like color differences throughout this, but yeah, I'm really kind of disappointed at this point. I'm hoping that when I fire this, a lot of that beautiful stain will come through. So let's just fingers crossed and hope for that. So with this one, I'm carving a flower and gum design. With the two, I poured two plain white mugs to also show you what the illustrative work is like, which I mentioned before. So I did those both flower and gum as well, so you can kind of compare the different techniques as well. But yeah, I'm rather excited, but also yeah, this one's made me feel a little bit disheartened that the pigments aren't strong enough again, and it's going to be a fail, but that's okay. That's why we're doing this, is to figure it all out. So I bisque fired these ones, so they're coming out. Bisque fire is where you sort of dry them out completely. It's almost like a test fire. So I pull them out, and again, the colors aren't really wowing me yet. I'm really just hoping that this clear glaze is gonna, and the final firing is gonna make them pop. So I start by glazing the inside, and then I sponge away any drips that drip down the side when I tip it out. But as I was doing this, when I got up to ones that were stained, with the sponge and the moisture on the sponge, it kind of like exposed some of the colors, which made me super excited, and I'll show you what that looked like. But it started to show that the colors were working, and I kind of gained a little bit of hope back that these are going to be really cool pieces. And I already hyped you up at the start, so you probably already know that these results really shocked me from this process. I think it was one of those moments of just trust the process. It's going to work out, just trust it. And I should have been more trusting, but as I sponged away, you could see all those pinks popping through, which gave me so much relief to know that it was actually probably going to turn out really cool once this clear gloss glaze really made them pop and brought out their vibrancy. Now in this video I didn't really talk about the slip casting, like staining the clay for slip casting, and that is mainly because I'm experimenting here, and I recommend experimenting yourself. But one thing I did learn at when I was studying ceramics is that they often recommend 5% powder to your clay. So to measure that out, you generally weigh your clay in a jug or something or other, and then whatever 5% of that total is, that's how much powder you add to your clay. But every single time I've done that method, I found that the color wasn't as pigmented as I liked. And maybe that was because of the stains I was using, oxides I was using, or even just the color wasn't what I wanted. So the reason I just sort of threw the powder in this time is to sort of see, you know, when it's highly pigmented, what will it look like when it comes out? So I'm sure once I figure it out, I'll be able to share a bit more details, but yeah, definitely do some experimenting for yourself. But the 5% rule is generally what they recommend. So I've packed that kiln up, closed it off, set it overnight, and here is the finished result. So opening the kiln, I was aware that it was probably going to be a mixed bag, but hopefully it was going to be good. And my jaw just dropped instantly. You can see that pink painted one at the front. I'm muttering, that's so cool. I was so impressed with that just initial opening, and I could see the spotty one behind, and then I saw one that I was expecting to be totally muted, but it came out so cool. You can see it in the background. It's got this beautiful lavender. It was the carved flower and gum mug really showed up. I thought it was going to be bland and boring, but it is so pretty. Anyway, I'll unpack this kiln and then we'll walk through the pieces because I'm really impressed with the pigment. I'm really happy. I think that this was a successful experiment. I've been getting a lot of successful experiments lately, so I'm just really chuffed. Here they all are together, but let's walk through it. So as I said before, I did 2 flower and gum mugs. So this is just to demonstrate the illustrative purposes of the piece. They are such a lovely vessel for painting, florals for painting, I think like scenery, absolutely anything. I think that these are just a wonderful staple in a mold collection. Because everyone loves a mug. It's got a beautiful shape. The handle has got a lot of room to hold it. I know everyone holds their mugs differently, so it's got all the versatility on how you can hold your mug. It's also a really nice palm hold mug. I think that this is a really beautiful shape, a very beautiful item to use like throughout your collections. The first one of the stain slip, I didn't paint this one first, but we're doing it first, is this beautiful painterly like colored slip with the white slip poured inside, so it's got the white background. I did actually run out of the white slip when I was pouring this and topped it up with some excess, and it gave it this beautiful purple inlay on the inside, which was a bit of a shock. I didn't expect that. The beautiful handle came out gorgeously, that's not a word, but you know, we're going with it. And I love how the handle doesn't look too jarring compared to the rest of it. Here is the pink backing mug. It is so gorgeous. The purple handle is so lovely, how it ties in to the purple that is around the piece. And again, this one I poured with the excess of the experiment, so I've got a nice pink and then a purple inlay, which is really cool. That was totally unexpected. I didn't think I was going to get that effect. I didn't even realize I was doing that effect. So happy little accidents there. It's almost like I intentionally did like a little pink rim on that mug, but I love these two together. I love the contrast of the colored handle. Now, let me talk about this piece, this underdog piece that I I'm really in love with, just because of its, I guess, like, it shocked me. I thought it was not going to come out all too nice, but the fact that I didn't mix those pigments in properly made this piece what it is. It is so special. So you've got some of the mixing of the clay, so it's got some really cool patterning, just randomized marble kind of patterning, and then where I've carved out the details has also added some dimension because it's showing some of the colors underneath, which is just so marvelous. So like I said, there is some of that pigment that didn't completely glaze over, so it won't be food safe, but looking at the little speckles, it's created this like confetti sprinkly look, and I actually really like it. I'm so glad that I rushed this, because I wouldn't have figured out this. I wouldn't have figured out this thing that I've done that I could potentially use for something else, to make like a fairy bread texture, or just sprinkle some color onto a piece. I think it's just really impressed me, because I've learned so much from making a little mistake. I've learned about something that I could do to do a certain effect. Just because this one isn't food safe doesn't mean that it's not a broken piece. It just means that you've got to use it for something else, like paintbrushes. Now the last one is our beautiful spotty dotty piece. I love the different colors, and it really shows on the white what the different colors actually look like. Whereas where they're sort of like painted on, they kind of blend together in a way. Whereas this one actually shows you a true example of what the colors would look like on a white background, or if you did the whole piece just like a pink, a coral, or a lavender. The lavender is a little bit more on the blue side for my liking. Like, I would have liked it a little bit more of a warmer, less of a cool tone, but more of a warmer tone. But otherwise, I love these. These are going to be a permanent staple in my shop, because they have so much potential to do so many things with them. They are such a gorgeous shape. Now, as I was filming the end cut, I realized that the flowering gum matches my own beautiful pins that are of my koala pots with the flowering gum beaming out of them. I'll put a link below for you to purchase yours. But let me know in the comments, what did you think of these mugs? I really love them. Make sure to like and subscribe for part 42. Thank you for watching, and here is your sneak peek for next week's reveal.